Hey, everybody. Welcome to another Dentistry Unmasked podcast. I'm Pam Maragliano, and with me, as always,
Hey, Pam. David Rice, friends. Good to see y'all.
so great to see you. So, hit me. What's the topic of the week?
Man, the topic of the week is I'm really excited to see our guests because I literally got to see them in person a couple days ago. Check out a lot of their products, which I've used kind of like I've used in my practice for 31 years. But the behind the curtain people that run this whole little thing called Microcopy, I don't know if you've heard of them, Pam, but pretty impressive.
I've absolutely heard of them. So, welcome, Chris Oshodin and Heather Siler.
Thank you.
So, let's talk about this. So, okay, I love my burr blocks and I love having systems and I love having things kind of set. So, when I have a procedure, that burr block comes out and we have them color coded, like all the things. One of the most annoying things ever is when a burr is missing, or you go to cut into a tooth and you're like, is my handpiece not working? Is my burr like stripped down to nothing? Like, what is going on? Or even worse, cutting off a crown and the whole metal cutter just like breaks off and you hope your assistant catches it in the suction. So let's talk about burrs and how frustrating they can be. And also they can be quite dirty, right?
hmm yeah, where would you like to where would you like to start with the burrs?
Let's start with the benefits of the use of a single use burr.
Okay. All right, yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. As you know, we're Microcopy Dental, where we are one of the companies that pioneered the single patient use concept with our diamonds and carbides. But all of the things you've kind of stated, it's like it gets erased out when you start out with a fresh burr. There's just so many things. We kind of focus on five benefits of a single patient use burr, which is, less chair time because you're starting off with a fresh burr that helps you get through your preps pretty fast. Uh, you It's less than wear and tear on your hand piece because there's no way you keep track of how many times you've used that burr, sterilized it. um Less handpiece wear, less trauma. Your procedure, a dull burr, you're not cutting as efficiently as you are, so you have to kind of lean on a tooth, which generates more heat. Infection control, you're not tracking how has this been cleaned. How many times have I used this? But those are kind of the top things that come to mind. And I mean, the biggest thing is, like, believe it or not, overhead costs. It's cheaper for you to start fresh than to keep using the same bird, trace it, sterilize it, do all of those things we mentioned before.
Yeah. Not to mention single patient use burrs for microcopy are much cheaper than your multi-use burrs. Sometimes a third of the cost, which is huge. That's a huge cost savings.
Yeah, Pam, can I throw some questions to the group and then for like you two being in part of this? This is fun.
Yeah,
Okay.
hit me.
How many times have you sat in a room with that favorite burr block of yours and been missing a burr that you need?
Oh my gosh, all the time, every day, all day,
Yeah.
sadly.
How many times did you pick up that favorite burr and then you were dull, it was dull and you wanted to like throw it across the room because you can't believe you just picked up a dull burr?
And you get like super angry and then you like take a deep breath and you like smile and you're like, hi, can I have another one of these? Yes.
Yeah, I will tell you. I got really lucky. I was a resident in my residency program. We used, Neo Diamonds. That was my introduction to microcopy years ago, and I never really looked back. And then as I got into my practice, the to Chris, which you just mentioned, like the concept of keeping score.
Yeah.
Um, Here's one for you, Heather. How many times is the instructions for use to have a burr that's multi-use? Like how many times max are we supposed to use that thing?
Exactly. Not to mention it's pretty gross.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean most of them, if you read the IFU, which is crazy because we never do that, right, Pam? I mean, you and I do it, but like most dentists don't read it. We hope our assistants do. It's 4 times. I don't know. How am I going to keep score?
Yeah.
You can't. Wow, that's really interesting. So I want to hear how you organize your single-use burrs because I think that that's probably a concern that practices have is like, all right, well, I like burr blocks. They're kind of in their place,
Yeah.
but now I'm going to have these little, I don't, little packets, if you will, of my burrs. Like how would you organize them?
Well, I think it depends on where you're using it. Are you talking about organizing it for your procedure or just in or storage?
For your procedure. So, for example, like I've got a crown and bridge burr block, I've got a restorative burr block, a polishing burr block, crown
Yeah.
delivery burr block. So, how would you kind of, say if you have three, four, five burrs that you use kind of all the time, does
Yeah.
your assistants kind of like put those together and they're just kind of like boom, ready to go?
Yeah, what I've seen from people who use our product is like they obviously whenever your assistant sets up for the day, they kind of set out the burrs that they want to use for a set procedure. Our um our concept is more so giving you the safety, the security, the predictability of starting each procedure with a fresh burr. That's kind of where we shine. How you approach that in organizing is really somewhat up to the clinician. So I'd hate to
How
say
did you do it?
was
David,
that
how did you do it?
Yeah, I'll tell you how we did it, and then I'll tell you how we do it in multiple practices because everybody sort of has a concept. We built all of our treatment rooms to be a replica of each other. So every room is laid out the exact same way. The instruments are in the same place, et cetera, et cetera. So we created a burr drawer. It's right behind, we're rear delivery, but we also have side cabinetry. So it's right behind our assistants in every treatment room. And to Chris's point, people know for setup, if we're doing, I don't know, a crown on number 30, everybody knows the burrs to grab. So they're just in these great little boxes with rolls and you can tear one off and it takes Christy or Stephanie all of about 30 seconds to do that. Now, I've been in practices that we coach that like ops setup like we do. I've also been in practices that have in their centralized sterilization, they store all of their gear. So for them, we teach them have your burr line them up, procedure code things. So it's set up and bundled and easy to grab. And then same thing as if you're tub and tray and you're coming from central sterilization, then just grab everything and load your tray just like you would an instrument pack.
Hmm.
Both work really, really
Interesting.
well. So I wouldn't change your style. I would just say fit this to how you organize everything else. But I'll tell you what, it is liberating to use burrs and then not have to like search through the tray to be like, oh, let's find all the burrs and put them back in the block. Cause I was always bad at that. It's just, let's dispose, no sterilization, no setup, just move on.
Nice.
Do you remember those burr blocks? When I bought my practice, that's kind of what they used. They were like, I don't know, they probably put like 100 burrs in them, and then they just sort of like take cotton pliers and like lift the burr out of this like not sterile burr block. And I don't know what they would do with it after, but it was like a burr collection. Like, do you still see that in practices you go into?
I do. I see everything. We see it all, but so here's what's kind of weird. And again, I mean, we don't think about this in terms of burrs. And in fact, like if I wasn't already a single use guy, I wouldn't have thought of it. But the average practice wastes about 90 minutes a day, right? We have SOPs for how we answer the phone and people walk in and we schedule and we bill and we collect and follow up, but nobody thinks about doing that from a clinical operating procedure. And the volume of time we burn in a day by not being organized is shocking. So burrs were just kind of an organic piece of that puzzle for us to build as part of our clinical operating procedure and like recapture that 90 minutes. Cause man, if I can prep one more crown in a day stress-free, I'm happy to do that.
Everybody's happy to do that. So let's talk specifically about microcopy single-use burrs. So, I feel like people, I mean, I'm just going to say it. We're dentists, so I feel like I can make fun of us. Dentists are funny. They're like, they're like, no, no, no. This is my burr and I like this. Don't make me deviate anything from that. Would you say a diamond burr, regardless of the manufacturer, are kind of the same? Or would you say that there's something specific about diamond burrs that we should be looking for, or some technology within the burr that would be beneficial to us?
That's a Chris question because I will gladly jump in on that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, on the surface level, yeah, diamonds are pretty ubiquitous. I mean, they're kind of everywhere. It's commonplace in a dental practice, but in terms of quality and selection of a diamond burrs, there's a lot of processes that go involved into manufacturing a diamond. What grade of stainless steel you using? What tolerances? Is this company the real company that makes the diamonds, or are they the face of another company that makes your diamonds? You can get into specifics as into, the grits, synthetic, natural diamonds, what processes go to bonding those diamonds onto the shank, which how much diamond is exposed. The more exposed diamond, the better the cutting efficiency is. So there's tons of technical things. So on the surface, like, yes, that a diamond looks like a diamond, but it's the processes that create the diamond are what you feel when you approach your procedure. That's where the differences are.
Pam, are you electric handpiece or air driven handpiece?
Electric all the way, baby.
I love that. I love that. And when did you convert?
Oh, I don't know, 2007, something like that.
So you were like one of the smart early adopters. I should have known that. But I mean, you think about all the people you and I know who are, there's the win in the burr is impactful both on electric and air driven, but especially for all of you who are listening or watching us here and you're an air driven, like you can't afford to have a burr that is not optimized to this point, just from a diamond standpoint, like what the grid is, how those diamonds lay out, what the differences in size and dimensions and regularity are. Like I totally nerded out when I was with these guys and was looking under things under like too many magnification to admit out loud. But if you're air driven, like I'm going to tell you, if you're using multi-use burrs on air driven, like you're making a big mistake. And if you're electric, you're going to really benefit from getting the right diamonds and the right carbides. To your point of like burr snapping, like why did the burr snap? What is it a quality control thing? Is it because you used it 7 times instead of 4 times? Like why?
Or 17, who knows?
Metal can only take so much.
Yeah, I would hope not.
That's interesting. So let's also talk about the variety of shapes, because again, dentists, like, we're so specific in the things that we want. And I feel like sometimes it's just like, for example, in a burr block where they have the little the code next to the hole where the burr goes, so the assistant knows that that code goes in there, that kind of thing. I think that you know people get no, I would say, like, they just get attached to this burr shape and taper, and whether it's a chamfer or shoulder or whatever. Do you have all the shapes and all the sizes that would pretty much make every dentist happy?
Uh, yes, we absolutely offer everything that you would need to get through your procedure, A through Z. Yeah, there just because let's say a manufacturer offers you 1,000 shapes, chances are you don't need anywhere near that. So, but in terms of what we offer in our portfolio, we have everything you need.
We looked through this giant 2-page chart. And when I mean giant, it was like picture the biggest, picture like the biggest poster you've ever seen laminated on both sides. And we went through, I don't know, like how many hundreds of shapes, to your point, Pam. But yes, I'm not sure, to your point, like if you put us all in a room, how many shapes we would actually use. But I guess there's people out there using all those things.
Yeah.
What are your go-tos, Pam? Like, do you have, like, if you were doing a posterior composite, like what are your favorite burrs?
Ooh, posterior composite. I say a round burr for sure to prep the tooth. I then create a bevel. So I need either like a flame shaper or like one of those little Christmas tree looking triangular burrs to kind of bevel my enamel. So that's usually my preparation. Sometimes I use like a shoulder crown prepper to, in the box area as well, depending on how deep the prep is. I had one that was like on a mesial of 15 root surface situation where I felt like getting down there with a crown burr was a little bit easier. And then my finishing and polishing burrs. So sometimes I will finish it, like I'll create my anatomy most of the time with my hand instruments. But then sometimes, depending on the tooth, I'll go back in with like an occlusionator or something like that. Or again, my Christmas tree burr to kind of shape my anatomy. And then polishing burrs. Usually I'll do like a red disc and then like a medium fine rubber wheel kind of situation. How about you?
Um, this is a really cool conversation because as we were going through these burrs, I think it was Chris, maybe it was Heather, but they're like, "Hey, do you use a round burr?" I'm like, I don't. It's really crazy, but I use like a 330 or a 247 that is rounded. And I do like the bulk of my preparation with that. In a perfect world, that is my burr. But to your point, on a deep proximal box, yeah, I like getting down there with more of a diamond that people might think is designed for an indirect restoration because I just feel like I have control and I have better visibility. And sometimes those
So you're prepping with carbides then, you're for the most part.
I do. For composites, I prep with carbides. Honestly, for a crown, I use a carbide. I use that same burr to do all my depth cuts and my interproximal slice. And then I come back with diamonds and do that. But I'm always thinking like, what are the fewest number of burrs I can use to give myself the prep that I want? So now I feel like I have to ask you, like, what would you do on like crown number 30? This is
Round number
fun.
30. Yeah, no, it is. So I'm like a depth cut girl all the
Love it.
way. So certainly I've got the occlusal depth cut burrs and the axial depth cut burrs. Usually I'll use just the occlusal for the most part. And then sometimes I'll use the axial, just depends on the tooth and what I'm doing. But for your standard crown prep, I don't generally use the axial. And then I like a chamfer. I like a good chamfer for the most part. Sometimes I'll choose a shoulder, but for the most part, it's a chamfer. And I also go, I'll prep everything with like a medium grit diamond, and then I will go to a red fine diamond to refine my margins and on a lower torque with my electric handpiece. How about you?
That makes me smile so big because we talked about that. I love fine diamonds after the prep to make sure my preps are polished because I'm guessing you've learned what I've learned, which is like the best preps gain the best ceramists at any lab in the world. And I'm hoping that they look at my preps and say, we got to give this guy to somebody who knows what they're doing because he's going to expect a finished product. I love that. So I have a question now.
Mhm.
And maybe Chris and Heather, like you guys might see this, like medium grit versus coarse versus super coarse. Like, do you see dentists like leaning in any directions? Is it all over the board?
Um, really, I what I've seen in the past is that like, most dentists start their preps with like a course. Um, Sometimes when a dentist is approaching a new shape that they're not familiar with, they always start off with a medium. I've always noticed it's kind of like too hot, too cold, like something in
Right.
the middle. So there's not really a super set rule, but obviously it kind of depends on where they're starting with the prep. But mostly I see course being the one they start with.
Yeah, it's really interesting. In dental school, they trained us on medium. And I think they trained us on medium because, I probably really wasn't as proficient as I was today. And they were worried about me doing, more damage to a tooth than
Yeah.
a course or a super course could do. But I think it's fascinating, right? Because I mean, one of the things I really respect about Pam is, she's a prosthodontist. So what I know is her preps are pristine. There's like any dentist would sit in her chair and gladly be a patient. And I think that's really rare. Pam, I was
Yeah.
just like bragging about how like there's probably 5 dentists in the world that would sit in their chair and you're one of them. So I love like like I'm guessing for you, like does the medium grit like give you the feel of the most control? Is that where you like to start there and then move to fine?
So I'm going to sit here and I can't pretend like I just came up with that myself. Basically, Bob Winter said you don't get any more efficiency with a burr that's got a greater grip than a medium. I was kind of taught like, oh, as a prosthodontist, you want to prep quickly. So using like a super coarse or something, but a super coarse burr is going to create, super coarse like ditching in your preparation. And so if you are trying to go for like a smoother preparation, you don't want to start with these like big divots in your prep. So when whatever Bob says, I just listen to. So he said, you don't really need to go more coarse than a medium. You can be super efficient with it. I've found that to be the case. And I also find, we were also, kind of taught like, okay, if you're going to cut zirconia, use a super coarse burr for that too. But the reality is, zirconia is so hard, and even Emax is so hard that you can kind of lose the larger grit on the diamond and almost denude it easier instead of using like a more fine diamond to remove that restoration as well. So I find kind of going with something a little bit less gritty still works quite well.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a great like segue. So Heather, Chris, like you have a whole line of zirconia driven burrs, yes?
Yes, we do. It's our Neo Diamond Z class line. All the diamonds are formulated to cut zirconia. It's interesting because like you said, a lot of clinicians have the assumption that the coarser the diamond, the faster I'm going to get through the material, and it's really not the case. It's actually the finer that actually catches it. And what we've formulated diamonds that are right in between that in between like fine and medium grit, and it's the perfect grit size to catch the material. So the clinicians that have used our Z class have seen great success using it. And thanks, Dr. Rice, for the walkthrough on understanding zirconia. That's everyone here is still. I think that's super beneficial for clinicians to hear that, to understand that better, and why knowing that, and why something like a Z class burr works with zirconia in terms of cutting it.
Yeah, we were talking about why matters and the differences between 3, 4, 5 hybrids that are out there. And I was like, don't feel bad. Like a lot of dentists don't necessarily understand, they're like yttrium who. So it's a good education for all of us, and a great reminder for those of us who've maybe heard it once or twice to hear it again.
It sure is, because I think that I talk to labs and they still say dentists will just write zirconia crown number, whatever. And I don't think dentists know the zirconia that the lab is using. And so we need to know these things.
It helps, especially when you're starting to talk about strength and minimal thicknesses. I was at a lab yesterday, and they work with one of the groups that we coach, and no one's really ever asked us what zirconia we use before you. I'm like, well, I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, and you might not like them all, but that's an easy one.
Wow. Amazing. So, okay, let's kind of recap here. So, number one, we all should be using single-use burrs. Would we agree with that?
We do, yes.
Agree.
Yes. Yes, we would.
And there's, for a number of reasons. Obviously, efficiency, cost savings, it's kinder to the tooth structure, but also from an infection control standpoint. Is there anything that I'm missing with that?
Predictability. I think for us, that's kind of one of the number one things. I was like, hey, if you want to replicate and get the same results over and over and over again, your technique, but what you don't realize is your tools, your instruments are changing, and the burr is the connecting point between you and the patient. So get that same predictability every time you start the procedure.
Yeah.
I love that.
Can I add one more thing before we wrap up?
No.
For any of you who think like, oh, it's just a burr, what I want you to do is call up your handpiece manufacturer, whoever it is you work with, and ask them what they think the value of a burr is. Because a lot of times when you and I think we are busting through turbines and all these repairs, and we think our XYZ handpiece is a bad handpiece, it's most often the burr that is causing the breakdown of that handpiece prematurely. So helps our patients, helps our practice, and probably not only going to be cost effective on the process side of day to day, but that handpiece repair thing is it's gonna nosedive in how much you're investing in it when you go single use, friends.
Awesome.
All right. Well, you guys heard it here. I hope you gave you something to think about. I know it certainly gave me something to think about. I get to go back on Monday and kind of have a chat with everybody about maybe tweaking our systems a little bit. So I know I feel inspired by this conversation. Chris, Heather, thank you so much for joining us. Where can we learn more, follow you, find you, etc.?
Well, I think obviously we're on all social media platforms, our website, microcopydental.com. But the biggest thing that I would love your audience to know is like, we can sit here and talk about how great our burrs are, but we're actually one of the few companies that you can sample our products. So anything you're curious about, you can call us directly or go online and request a sample. So we do, I mean, I can tell you the burr is great, or you can just use it yourself and experience it. So
Try them and you guys will love them for sure.
yeah.
Love, love, love it. Pam, I don't know how 30 minutes cranks by so quick every single week, but it does. So thanks everybody for being here. Thanks for listening. Pam,
Thanks for having us.
great to see
Thank
you.
you guys.
Great to see you guys. See y'all next week.
All right, bye.
Thank you, everyone, for watching or listening to the show this week. And thanks to our guests and sponsors on this episode.
Please check out our social media at Dr. Pamela_Maragliano and at Dental Economics Official.
Or you can check me out at Ignite DDS or at Dr. David Rice.
And go to dentaleconomics.com to receive dental economics. You can choose to receive DE in print or digitally, and you can also get the details of our Principles of Practice Management conference on our website.
If you have topics or guests or anything you'd like to talk about on the show, send us an email to dentistryunmaskedpodcast@gmail.com, and we will do our very best to make it happen. Thanks again, and we'll see you next week.